I just wanted to get a few tools out here and talk to you about how I use the tools. It's kind of a nuanced thing, and it's also something I find myself repeating a lot at my clinics. So I just thought I'd pop it up, make a quick little video here and pop it up on YouTube and hopefully help you guys out. How you use your tools is really, really important. There's a learning curve to it with all the groundworking tools that are out there. I've just got a few here, some of my favorites that I work with. And if you're not used to using groundworking tools, sticks and strings and flags, sometimes they can feel cumbersome. You don't quite know how to use them or whatever, so I'll just try to explain it. If you do use that stuff already, I'm going to try to help you learn how to use them a little bit more gracefully, more tactfully. So I guess the first one to start with is just the good old stick and string. It's been around for a little while. I found a lighter stick and a lighter string, and the first generation of these things are big and heavy and cumbersome. Really get in the way of your timing, weight your arm down, and you're not in the right place at the right time. And we all know how important your timing and your release is when you're training and with your horsemanship. So that's why I choose to use this one. And then the way, here I'll show you, number one, how I put it up. I like to put it up nice and neat. So I pull it tight and then start wrapping it back on itself right here, like this, and then tuck it through like this. And that way when your sticks and strings are put away, they're nice and tidy. It's just a way that I learned how to do it that I really liked. I can't take credit for inventing it. I don't know who did, but it's pretty nice and tidy and handy. I like that. Okay, so when you're using this tool, I always tell people if you're close enough to touch the horse with the stick. Hang on, let's back up one more time. There's 4 ways to stimulate a horse. I look at horses and I see them as visual, spatial animals. They see things, they get snorty and they move around things, you know, or they jump sideways because something scared them. They're very spatial. So there's 4 ways to stimulate these animals. There's visual, you know, like, hey, 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 horse, you know, everybody's seen the thing at the show and there's loose horse running around. Everybody spreads their arms out, hey, 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 kind of makes a visual stimulus. And then the auditory stimulus, something that they can hear. You can use that, and I'll go through all that with all these tools. Tactile, so touch stimulus, and then spatial stimulus. You move your horse's personal space around. Okay, so all these tools are going to influence the horse in different ways. That's why I like to have the right tool for the right job. You can pound a nail in with a pair of pliers, but it's kind of cumbersome. If that's all you have is a pair of pliers, yeah, you can get the nail in, but geez, it's hard to do. So when I have a nail, I try to use a hammer. And then when I have something that needs pliers, I try to have pliers. So that's kind of how I am. That's why I like a lot of different tools. This tool is heavier. It's kind of a thud, kind of a dead bounce to it. I like that bounce, especially for teaching. If you're close enough to touch a horse with the stick, I bounce. So if I were to ask this horse to go into motion here, she's kind of asleep because I'm yakking here, so it'll be kind of perfect. If I would ask her to go into motion here, I'd give her a rub, and then I'd bounce her out of that space that she was in. And I didn't want her to go very far, run over my stuff there. But again, these tools, you don't want them to be worried about. Like, she's kind of reacting away from that stick, right? She's giving it meaning when it has no meaning. So I always spend a lot of time grooming them or petting them with this tool, as well as communicating. I bounce her out of that space. Reach over here and catch her personal space, right? So I reach around. So now I'm influencing her space with this tool, her personal bubble there, right? So that's how I, good girl, that's how I handle that. If they're far enough away to touch, so use tactile stimulus, touch with the string, I slice the air, right? I don't crack these things. A crack, your Lunge Whip is more for cracking, right? It's got the popper that can handle it. These type of tools, it's not meant to crack. You can crack them. Sometimes you'll crack the popper right off of them. They're not meant to be cracked. The smoother you learn how to use your tools, the more accurate you learn how to use your tools, the more conversant you'll be, and the more smooth and graceful your animal will move, right? The more seamless the conversation will be. So again, if I'm using my string, I slice, okay? Okay, so that's a stick and string. This is kind of my teaching one. It's a bit heavier, not as heavy as that first generation, right? It's a lot lighter, it's a lot easier on my wrist. And then because I am who I am and I'm always trying to make things better, easier on myself, I just took one of my flag sticks and I put a string on it. I put one of my thin strings on it, so that's even lighter. Now this is pretty whippy, right? It's not very good for teaching. There's not a lot of beef behind it, so if I've got a horse that's really pushy or hanging on me or running through things, I wouldn't use this, because this is it becomes ineffective real fast. And when you're pulling the string around, it pulls it back like that, and it's a weak tool. So this is for when I'm just going out kind of doing my everyday thing with a horse that already knows what he's supposed to, or how he's supposed to act. So it's not much of a teaching, but it's great for just working your horse. Let's go into the flags. I always try to get people to think about when they're with their horses, it's a nuance thing, when they're with their horse, think about being in water, okay? If I'm in water, I'm already touching this horse. If I move my hand towards her face, I'm touching her. My analogy I always use is think about water in a tube, little plastic tube with a cork on the end. If you take a cork to the other end and you push that cork into that tube, the other cork will fly off because that water has pushed that cork off, right? So that's how I treat my horses, and that's why my horses look and act and respond the way they do, is because I'm always trying to get to where I'm handling their space. There's nothing lighter than air, right? So that's part of the amazingness of the horse to me. So when I look at a flag, that would displace a lot of water, right? When it moves, versus this thin little string that doesn't displace a lot of water. So this is a better tactile tool. This is kind of a better spatial tool. This is big and broad and very visible. So when we're talking about the ways to stimulate a horse, visually, this is a really good visual one. So big group of horses or a young horse that doesn't know much and you might scare if you touch, see this has got some auditory to it as well. The string, you can wing that thing around and get it, so you got some auditory to that. The thing about this is they'll get desensitized to it really fast if you overuse it, because it's kind of a tool with all bark and no bite. So if you desensitize them visually and auditorily, I don't even know if that's a word, auditorily, you're done. If you're not close enough to tactily stimulate them with the stick, the horse they'll stay just out of range and they won't move because they're energy conservationists. There's lots of different flags. I prefer, this is a personal preference, I prefer these silkier ones like this. You can get a little crack to them if you want. I just like them because they're soft. So when I'm petting the horse and getting them used to and doing a little bit of confidence building or desensitizing, right? It's real soft and it feels nice and soft. There's other ones out there that are crinkly, all different colors. You can see I have white ones and blue ones, whatever. That can all mean something to different horses. It might not mean anything to one horse, the color change, and another horse, they might be a little bit more reactive to one color than the other, probably the white one. So, in any case, I do like the silkier ones. There's nothing wrong with the crinklier ones. There's definite purpose for that. A little bit different auditory stimulus, and maybe confidence building and desensitizing, all that. I just found this little, it's like a little Buggy Whip just at the store, and I took one of my flags and I put it, I think I swapped it off of that stick and I put a string on that, and I put this flag on this. Just a different action. That stuff means some, it all means things, if you want it to. It's nice and light, but it's whippy, right? It's really whippy. So it can be a weaker tool as well. The whippier a tool is, to me, the higher level it is, because you're away from the building blocks and the cumbersome times. You're more into the refined times. You need light, soft, kind of springy tools like that. Boing, boing, right? It's not got any beef or any backbone to it. It's pretty springy. But I like to use it. Obviously, that flag's old and dirty. I like to use it for certain horses. I also have, because I do Liberty with multiple horses, I have one of these guys that extend way out. So because my Liberty is spatial, visual and spatial, I like to handle and manipulate, move horses' space around. So this gives me the opportunity to kind of reach out and reach around 2 or 3 horses and handle. I can have 2 or 3 over here, 2 or 3 over here, and handle them and ask them to move different body parts around. So I like having that. Got to be careful with this because it's graphite and it breaks really easy. So it's not a teaching tool. Got to make sure it stays clean as you can. So there's that flag. And then this is one of my favorite ones to have as well. It's another graphite pole. Same length as these guys. It's just you can fold it up, take it along with you on a ride, trail ride or whatever. Just put it in your pocket and away you go. I like that little guy. Thing about this one, there's no spring to it. It's stiff, right? So it's got a different action to it. So it's going to get a different response. Okay, and I guess here's my Liberty sticks. I like this. I like these. These are my find, or my combination. It's a shorter stick with a longer lash and a long stick with a shorter lash. I like it because sometimes this long lash is too, when you're working in close, or you have a couple, you're working with a group maybe, that long lash gets down under their feet and they'll learn to step on your string, kind of follow your shot. And this one I can kind of, if they get in close, I can still kind of swirl it around and get some, and influence their body parts, Again, these are really light and whippy, right? So these are not for teaching necessarily. Your horse needs to already know how to yield and respond really well, hindquarters and forequarters, forwards and backwards, right? You can change sides with your sticks. It's great because you actually, the way I do my Liberty, you're quite quick. You're right where you need to be when you need to be. You're not fumbling around with a heavy stick with a long string all the time. These are real handy when you're getting into upper level Liberty. And then lastly, I just wanted to bring out ye old Lunge Whip. There's nothing wrong with ye old Lunge Whip. This is probably mostly for auditory stimulus. They're always very springy. They're so long though for groundwork. The style that I do, they're so long, they're cumbersome as far as being able to handle just the forequarters, just the hindquarter, just the rib cage, just the shoulders, just the nose. It's just too long. It's too much, and it's really hard to control because it's got all that bounce and spring to it. I like to be real clean and quiet with the way I move, and it's hard to be quiet when something's moving like that. But there's nothing wrong with it for its purpose. It's a lunge whip. It's for lunging. There's bigger ones and longer ones. you see a lot of times, or I've seen a lot of times, the vaulting folks have really big long ones so that they can reach out there and maybe touch that horse if they need to, while that horse is way out on that outer circle, to try to help with its rhythm and to keep the rhythm right so that the gymnast can do their acrobatics. So again, there's nothing wrong with it. I just don't use it because it's not functional for the stuff that I do. Oh, how about your rope? You know, I see a lot of, hey, sweetheart. Here, good girl. I see a lot of ways people handle the rope. I like to think about shaking my rope. If I want that horse to back up, put some energy in front of the drive line. If she's nice and light, she knows what I'm asking over there. If she weren't, you know, if this stimulus wasn't enough and I needed to, hey, get her attention, I'd roll down that rope and might pop her right there on the nose right there. Good girl. She didn't really need that, but I'm just trying to explain how you would do that. The action to say go up to that high phase is the same action you'd use trying to throw a kink out of your hose, right? You kind of throw it and twist it. And sometimes if a horse is really getting pushy and you need to really amp up your phase, you just roll one of those pops or 2 or 3 of those pops down there, and that'll get their attention and keep them from running over the top of you. Good girl. Good girl. This back and forth motion is really reminiscent of this back and forth motion, see? And it helps them back up straight versus a lot of times people are bouncing like this. It's not, number one, when you got that cone of sight, right? It's hard to see straight up and down movement. Hard for them to see straight up and down movement. It's easier for them to see that motion from one eye to the other, so it goes through that blank space. It's easier to see that motion than a straight up and down motion when you're in front of them like this. When you're to the side, now yeah, this makes more sense. See how I'm broadside to her and straight up and down? I think that's about it for these tools. I hope that helps. If you've got any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment area below. Or if you have any ideas on maybe something like this that you'd like to see, let us know, please. And I'll see you down the road.